These conspiracy theories are going to send you down an absolute rabbit hole. So there has been a long-running conspiracy theory about the beef between Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift, and now Olivia herself has kind of confirmed in a way that the rumors are true. I also have some inside information that I can't tell you who told me this, but I could tell you with 100% alleged certainty that this is true. Basically, the beef happened a long time ago when Taylor Swift allegedly demanded credits on Olivia Rodrigo's song Deja Vu because it sounded similar to Cruel Summer. This I have beef with because I do not even hear a single damn similarity in that song. But either way, this person posted actual proof that this is true. This is genuinely what happened. And then I'll give you my insider scoop information in a second.
We need to talk about the Reddit insider who knew that the Cruel Summer writers were going to be credited on Deja Vu more than 3 weeks before that information was public. Now, I know some people don't like an internet conspiracy theory or these kind of inside sources, which, okay, you can scroll away, but this was crazy. And I was there. Like, I remember this happening in 2021. In fact, I've DM'd with this now deleted user. But here's the story. There was a thread on Popheads on Reddit talking about how Macy Peters has signed with Ed Sheeran's label. People were talking about her owning her masters, and this person says, this is why Taylor speaking up is so important. But our insider comes in, then Taylor demanded publishing from Olivia. She's not all rainbows and butterflies. And someone else comes in and says, are you referring to Olivia's song One Step Forward, Three Steps Back? That was a direct interpolation. Olivia asked Taylor if she could use it, and Taylor agreed. And she deserves credit on that direct interpolation. The insider says, I'm referring to Deja Vu. Now, if you hover over this 5 years ago, you will see that that was indeed posted on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. The general public found out that they would be receiving credit on July 9th, 2021. But the person that was talking about one step forward, three steps back comes back and says, where did you hear that? There's no truth to that. And then the insider follows up. Remember this thread? I told you so. This was on July 9th when this information is now public. They say, yeah, I saw the news. How did you know that was going to happen? And they claim either friends on Taylor's team, Olivia's team, or lawyers. Now, I thought this was like a deep cut in the lore of this story, but this thread has been going around on Stan Twitter, and that is why this person has now deleted their account. But it does seem like this person has some level of inside information because, again, they knew that those writers would get credit on Deja Vu before anyone else did. People love to rewrite history, but there was basically no one talking about the writers potentially, the Cruel Summer writers potentially getting credits on Deja Vu. Like, that wasn't a topic of discussion, which is why people were like, there's no truth to that. Because at this point, that wasn't in like the realm of possibilities. There are a couple other threads where this user has commented. The one other most interesting one, this was on Split Decisions. Olivia Rodrigo has given up millions in publishing royalties. This Billboard article that I'm always talking about. There's a Popheads discussion about this where the same insider contributed. For context, there's people saying her next album will be vetted to make sure this doesn't happen. Someone saying that next time, hopefully she can afford lawyers that would actually argue this because from their perspective, it's BS. And someone responds to that with, this is my exact suspicion as well. It's like how sometimes a person or organization will pay a settlement to an aggrieved party rather than dragging it out in court cases and spoiling their public image. The label knows whatever financial damage the publishing credits will cause will be minuscule to what Olivia's career is likely to generate in the coming years and have opted to quickly settle and avoid harming her public image by dragging it out. Again, just someone's opinion, but the same insider says this is pretty spot on. They don't want to fight Taylor and then her fan base at such an early point in her career. A lot of those fans overlap. Taylor was instrumental in getting Paramore to go from You Have My Blessing to We Want Publishing Now. That part is really interesting because Dan Nigro has that quote that said people get funny about this when songs get really popular. Because again, Olivia's team approached Paramore before Good For You was released and basically said there might be some similarities here. Do you need any credit? Allegedly, they said no, but then the song was hugely successful, went #1, and then they changed their minds. This person says that Taylor played a part in that. Now, I don't necessarily believe every part of this, but it is very interesting that this person knew that the credits would be given before anyone else did. It does seem like they have some level of inside information here, so is this true? I also think it's funny that this person got negative 15 upvotes when they said that they would get credits on Deja Vu. Like, nobody believed this, but it turned out to be true.
I don't think that my person is the same as this Reddit user, but honestly, I guess it could be. But yeah, no, I know for a fact that this is, I will still say allegedly, but allegedly true. It's difficult. I love Taylor Swift. I love Olivia Rodrigo. But at the end of the day, if you just look at all the information that is in front of you, it correlates. Like it really, really does. I've also heard directly from someone in the music industry that The Grudge by Olivia Rodrigo is actually about this Taylor Swift situation. Like, specifically, have nightmares each week about that phone call in May, which is allegedly the time that Olivia got the call that Taylor was demanding rights on Deja Vu. And it kind of checks out with the timeline because they like found that because May, and then, you know, it takes a couple months for the media to find out. June, July. I don't know. Okay, listen, I mean, actually, I do know. I do know. And I hate it because I just think it is such a mean girl energy. I didn't know Paramore's involvement with that. I didn't realize that that was a thing. And that sucks, personally. Like, that just genuinely does suck that they got permission for these songs and then later wanted credit once Olivia popped off. I just think it's a little sick and twisted. And I 100% understand why Olivia has not really spoken out about this until now, because even with what little she did say, Taylor Swift fans are going crazy in the comments.
Is there a frost between you and Taylor? Like, is that something that hovers over your mind? Is it something that you think is a construction of the people who are doing internet detective work? How do you view that now that you're a few years removed from the initial kind of like ruptures?
Um, I don't know. I think I tried to not let it like get to me or upset me. I think I just try to keep it trucking. I think it was so long ago. I think
Yeah.
there's no use in like harping on it. And yeah, I just try to make songs that I love and try to be kind and good
Hmm.
to other people and supportive of other people. And I've always like tried to be like that. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I think that's all you can do.
And I just feel like her response as well resonates with this being true because I think that she is a genuine Swiftie, like was a huge Taylor Swift fan. Everyone knew this. Like she talked about it several times, how Taylor Swift was like one of her biggest inspirations. And then your idol end up actually kind of being like a mean girl towards you. I think that would be heartbreaking, and she sounds pretty defeated when it comes to this conversation topic, but I really want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. There's like a deeper rabbit hole that basically talks about how Taylor Swift made Sabrina Carpenter famous because she was like getting back at Olivia for using Cruel Summer on Deja Vu. And allegedly that is the reason why Sabrina was on the Eras tour with Taylor Swift, because obviously we all know Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter had their beef over driver's license and Joshua Bassett. So I don't know if that part is true, but the Eras tour really did launch Sabrina a lot into the spotlight. And obviously she is one of the biggest pop stars now. And I just think it's all a little interesting. And I just don't love the way that Taylor went about this situation. And if you just look objectively here, I think that Deja Vu sounds absolutely nothing like Cruel Summer. Like, I was so confused when I even heard this rumor for the first time. And at the end of the day, I think you can tell with Olivia's behavior towards Taylor, like, she still is very cordial about it. Like, she honestly didn't even really say much, and still the Taylor Swift fans in the comments were attacking her. And I do think that it really would have been a stupid move for Olivia to publicly go after Taylor Swift after she demanded these credits. 100%. Because I think, again, a lot of their fan bases really overlap. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. What do you think? Have you heard any inside tea? Because, girl, I just think, I don't know. I'm sorry. I love Taylor Swift. I love Olivia Rodrigo, but a part of me just feels very, very bad for Olivia Rodrigo because I feel like she's obviously the underdog in this situation. I am a fangirl, so I know how heartbreaking that would feel for me. And I feel like I can really put myself in her shoes. So I don't know. Let's hear your thoughts though. There is a viral conspiracy theory that Erika Kirk is having an affair, and there's kind of some proof behind it. Okay. So I have been digging in this rabbit hole, and honestly, like, I debated just like driving to Beverly Hills and becoming a spy for myself to see if this was true. But there have been a lot of rumors flying recently about Erika Kirk and Blake Wynn. So on the evening of Thursday, May 14th, at an ultra exclusive invite only bar called 1912, which is in Beverly Hills, apparently the two of them were seen kissing, holding hands. He had her hand on her ass, like the whole nine yards. And this person that's claiming these details apparently has multiple resources saying the exact same thing. I don't know. I kind of believe it, and I'll tell you why in a second, because we know how Erika Kirk is an absolutely diabolical liar, and we'll get into it. But this is the witness statement from the Beverly Hills bar.
Let's talk about Thursday, May 14th. Two separate sources confirmed that she has already moved on. A trusted eyewitness who knows the Beverly Hills hotel scene spotted Erika Kirk at an ultra exclusive bar at the Beverly Hills Hotel, Bar 1912, and she was getting intimate with tech entrepreneur Blake Wynn. Blake Wynn is the nephew of casino mogul Steve Wynn. These two were seen hugging and kissing.
Wait, what is she doing here snuggling up with this dude? And, like, he literally had his hand on her ass. He got up and walked away.
She jumped on X to declare that she was just celebrating her son's birthday. She called the accusers obsessed, and she literally tweeted that they needed to brush off Dorito dust and go touch grass.
So, yes, Erika Kirk actually responded to this rumor, which I was shocked by because Erika Kirk usually doesn't really respond to things. Besides, of course, the video where she was like wearing a baseball hat and looked like she was about to like hit us with a freaking bat or something, where she addressed Candace Owens directly and a couple of other like theories about her. But she, for the most part, is not likely to just go on Twitter and tweet about certain things that people are saying about her. So this is interesting to me. But she basically wrote, "Every single word here is a lie. Charlie's love will last me a lifetime. The Lord is the only one who can ever fill that most painful void." And here's the thing, I don't fucking believe her, because not only is she unbelievable in general and has just a sinister energy, Erika Kirk has lied about her relationships several times. Like, I'm talking bold lies that have been proven now that she was lying the entire time. Okay? Like, this girl saying that she didn't do something or that something isn't true really means nothing to me, because I'm just like, okay. What else are you gonna say is not true, okay? But I also think it's interesting how she has lied specifically about relationships in the past. She basically makes it seem like she's never dated anyone before Charlie, and Charlie was her first love, and blah, blah, blah. And literally none of that was true. Like, she was on a dating show. She was doing so many different things. She clearly was not a Christian that doesn't drink alcohol, even though that's how she portrays herself. She wasn't like that. Like, she's not, if you just look into her past even a little bit, you will know that Erika Kirk is a liar.
The rebrand of Erika Kirk started almost immediately. She positioned herself as this untouchable queen, this godly figure of traditional womanhood and the traditional trad wife movement. She went on a CBS town hall to push this narrative to the mainstream. She bragged about her unblemished dating history, and she claimed she spent 5 whole years in New York City without going on a single date. People quickly found her 2014 audition tape for The Amazing Race. In that video, she's literally introducing her boyfriend to the camera. The users dug up deleted Instagram posts from 2017 showing her taking painting classes with conservative media personalities. And the timeline also glazes over her appearance on Bravo's Summer House as a reality TV love interest. So
Erika Kirk has been a known liar, and I think something also that is very important to note when it comes to Erika Kirk is that she has persistently always wanted to be famous. I think that that is a very big point here, because I truly feel like she took Charlie's death and absolutely ran with it. And I think this media attention that she is getting is exactly what she wanted. Obviously, there's conspiracy theories about her involvement with Charlie's death. And, that aside, I think regardless, she definitely has been using it for financial gain and recognition. Without a doubt. Like, she has literally bragged about the damn hats sold at his memorial service like equating to $200,000 worth of revenue. Okay, that's not normal to do like 7 days after your husband gets assassinated, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on this though, because I honestly do believe this is probably true. And I just think it's so interesting that she's in her 30s and she's saying, like, basically claiming now that she'll never get married again or have another relationship because God will fill that void for her, which I just think that this religious cycle of things being pushed here by Erika Kirk is so weird. Like, it's very, very pointed and tactical, honestly. Like, it is clear that she is trying to get people to believe that she is this grieving widow. And the reason why people don't believe her is because she's clearly not. She's just clearly not. All right? That's all I'm going to say. All right, the next theory I want to talk about has to do with Marilyn Monroe. So there is an old Hollywood mobster. So this guy is named Gianno Russo. He actually was in The Godfather, but allegedly he claims that he lived a double life and he was a real life mobster and associated with major mafia figures like Frank Costello and the Gambino crime family. And he goes into it in detail in his book, The Hollywood Godfather. And he is now claiming that Marilyn Monroe was murdered because she was pregnant with Robert Kennedy's child. And honestly, I believe him.
Bobby was consoling her because John said once he became president, he'd leave Jackie and marry her. That's how naive she was. Then she disclosed to us that day, screaming, Bobby impregnated her, and he convinced her to abort it. So she was done with them. I mean, we don't know how mentally and physically hurt she was by these guys up until this time. She's, I'm going to the press. Once she said that, we knew she was dead.
Some of the discrepancies when it comes to Marilyn Monroe's death that just do not add up. They do not make sense, okay? So first of all, according to official logs, her body was found around midnight, but the police were not notified until 4:25 a.m. So many hours in between. Why? Like, you'd think if a otherwise healthy woman in her 30s is passed out and not breathing, of course you're going to call a police immediately because you think maybe they can be resuscitated, maybe something can happen, something can help. So I think the fact that they waited so long is definitely suspicious. The housekeeper, Eunice Murray, was also weird, okay? She was found by the police doing washing bed sheets in the middle of the night, which is a highly unusual action that many investigators thought was suspicious and thought was also an attempt to tamper with the crime scene. Now, do we know that that's true? Not really, but she also came forward years later, like I'm talking decades after the investigation had already been closed. And Eunice Murray, the housekeeper, confessed that Attorney General Robert Kennedy had visited Marilyn Monroe's house that day that she died. And she also claimed that it was a heated and emotional confrontation and that the official police records completely omitted this information. And it honestly keeps going on. Like, for example, Marilyn Monroe was said and known by many of her friends and family to have this little red journal that she wrote everything in. Like, allegedly she wrote so many government secrets that she learned from dating the Kennedy brothers. Like, it was a famous, like, everyone knew that this journal existed and that Marilyn was writing everything in it. And that diary just vanished from her bedside within hours of her death. Again, this allegedly contained a lot of notes about high-profile people and political secrets that we will never have access to because that is just missing. Where did it go? Where did it go? Marilyn also told multiple friends and family members that she felt like she was being watched. She felt like her phone was tapped. There were recordings, there were microphones like recording things in her house, cameras, etc., and she was being followed. And now, years later, like this I think came out in like 2017, that the CIA actually was tailing Marilyn Monroe, and that is 100% true. I also find it incredibly interesting that Marilyn Monroe allegedly spent her final evening making numerous phone calls And investigators discovered that her official telephone records from that night had been completely erased, or at least heavily redacted, by federal agencies before the local police could even review them. So I don't even know what more you need to hear, okay? But we'll actually talk about some forensics, okay? Because I find this stuff to be interesting as well. But despite the lethal dose of Nembutal and chloral hydrate that was found in her system, there was no water or any cup of any liquid in her bedroom whatsoever. So the concept of her dry swallowing 60 pills just seems absolutely absurd. And that was just kind of glazed over by investigators. Again, I wonder why. They were also going to perform an advanced toxicology on some samples that came from Marilyn's stomach, kidneys, intestines, there was preserved tissue samples. But before this toxicology could happen, these samples just disappeared. Which what do you mean? How is that part of Marilyn Monroe's body disappearing? What's happening here? Clearly a cover up. I just feel like there is no doubt in my mind, and now adding in this conspiracy theory that she was possibly pregnant with Robert Kennedy's child, it adds another layer for sure. For sure, because I think that it is highly believable that he got her pregnant and then he was like, you have to get an abortion. And she was like, I don't want to. And also now I'm going to try and expose you. And that immediately got her killed. And it's really sad and fucked up. And I truly, truly believe this conspiracy theory to be true. But let me know your thoughts. All right, there has been a long-running conspiracy theory about Fidel Castro and Justin Trudeau. There is a theory that Justin Trudeau, because his mother was actually buddy-buddy with Fidel Castro, that Justin Trudeau's real father is Castro. And I kind of thought this theory was a meme at first, but now Fidel Castro's actual daughter spoke out about this. And after hearing what she had to say, I believe the conspiracy theory 100%. I don't know, something about it is weird.
Fidel Castro's daughter, Elena Fernandez, was asked whether or not Justin Trudeau is her brother.
For years, we've heard rumors that Justin Trudeau, the former Prime Minister of Canada, could be your half-brother. What do you think of that?
The only thing I can say is that his mother used to visit the country very often.
That wasn't a no. Let's walk down this conspiracy theory lane. I tend to believe that he is actually Castro's kid. The very first time that Pierre Trudeau and his wife Margaret met Fidel Castro was in 1976, and Justin Trudeau was born in December of 1971, so the timing is off, but you're all wrong. They absolutely could have. Justin Trudeau and Fidel Castro just look alarmingly similar. And look at Justin and his supposed dad. Do you think they look as much alike? Because I don't really see it. So let's go through the actual timeline here. Okay, Justin Trudeau was born December 25th of 1971, which means he was conceived around late March or early April of 1971. Pierre Trudeau and Margaret Trudeau had just gotten married in March of 1971, and he was 51 years old and she was only 22 years old. During the exact conception window for Justin Trudeau, Pierre and Margaret took an interesting trip. So we actually don't know exactly where they stayed on this 10-day trip to the Caribbean. Now imagine you're 22-year-old Margaret and you're hot and beautiful. I mean, look at her. She is stunningly beautiful. And you're on this island and your husband is this 51-year-old balding 5'8" man. And this strapping, handsome, 6'2", dark, revolutionary leader who's only 44 comes walking around, and he's got charisma and he's a big personality. Maybe a 22-year-old might sneak out of her room every so often to meet for a little rendezvous. People say, well, how dare you insinuate that Margaret would be a cheater? Well, no, she said she was a cheater. She wrote books about being a cheater. She cheated on Pierre. That's not a secret. She admitted it herself. Okay. And by the way, Justin Trudeau is 6'2", and his dad was 5'8", and Fidel Castro is 6'2". So not only does he look just like him, but he also has his build. You be the judge.
I actually really believe this conspiracy theory now, and I'm totally into it. I've gone down the rabbit hole, and I just think that the daughter's response was incredibly weird. Her being maybe. I just I just feel like that was, again, not a no. She definitely didn't say no. I also think what's funny when it comes to Fidel Castro is every time I see old videos of him, I'm just he screw Justin Trudeau. He looks exactly like Frank Alvarez from The Basement Yard. How does Frankie get that he looks like Idris Elba, Jason Momoa, literally everyone else in the books, and no one's pointing out how he looks exactly like young Fidel Castro? And honestly, it's crazy. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this conspiracy theory, because I feel like I've heard it before, but I genuinely did not think that there was any proof to back it up. But now that I've gone down the rabbit hole of it, I definitely believe that this is true, and I think it's kind of crazy. It also kind of reminds me of Mia Farrow. So there is a conspiracy theory that one of her sons is actually Frank Sinatra's son. So Ronan Farrow is Mia Farrow and Woody Allen's son, technically. But there has been a long-running conspiracy theory because of Mia Farrow and Frank Sinatra's relationship that Frank Sinatra is actually his dad. And honestly, I 100% believe this one because they look exactly alike. And also, when asked about it in 2013, he responded to the tweet by saying, listen, we're all possibly Frank Sinatra's son. And I just feel like that is hilarious. Mia herself has said that this is a possibility. I don't know if they've gotten like a paternity test like behind closed doors and just never made it public, but I would also want to dissociate myself from Woody Allen, so I totally get where like he would be like, fingers crossed here, like, you know, let's hope Frank Sinatra's my dad instead. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on, I guess, both of these cases. I didn't mean to bring up the Frank Sinatra rabbit hole, but it is also an interesting one to go down. All right, something I really want to talk about is Euphoria. So I'm not going to really be spoiling anything, although I think everyone knows at this point what happens here. But I saw this TikTok pointing out how strange and like forced the biblical undertones really were in this season of Euphoria. And I agree. I think something weird was happening here, and I don't understand how more people are not talking about it, because like I just find this to be incredibly weird and creepy, and like again they're trying to push this like weird narrative here.
So my last video got deleted, so I'm going to say this again. The push for Christianity in the last Euphoria season was very strange and bizarre to me. And again, I do get that there was religious symbolism throughout all the seasons. That makes sense to me. It also makes sense to me that people healing from addiction a lot of times turn to religion and in AA. But the way they hammered down like and push Christianity in this season, especially the last episode, was crazy to me. And again, I know people complain that this past season was very random, like there's a lot of random things, but this felt very, very random. By like the last episode, by the end of it, I felt like the main message was Christianity is good, like we should turn to Christianity. And then the last scene being him at Ali going to that farm of the Christian family, sitting down and having dinner with the family, and then the last scene being the American flag was an interesting choice to me. I really want to know what you guys think about it. I do want to say my girl Lori killed it though. I was very shocked at her last scene. Also, when they showed Jules' last scene, I forgot she even existed. Because it felt like she barely had a part in the season. But I also want to add that if a lot of the messaging was just about like the concept of God, I don't think it would have been as weird. But it was just being so specific about hammering down Christianity, specifically Christianity, and that's what I found so bizarre.
So that I agree with, because like I do think that the concept of people becoming very spiritual or religious when they face like really any adversity, but especially addiction, like that is a known thing that a lot of people turn to spirituality or religion. I just think it's strange how specific Euphoria really was in this season, pushing this level of Christianity and like America, like, I don't know, it felt like Sydney Sweeney wrote it. Like, I don't know what was happening here. I just didn't like it, and I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because it was something that took me aback, because this is literally show is the furthest thing from a religious show, or at least like I don't feel like the religious undertones were there throughout the entire series. But I want to hear your thoughts, because I've been seeing a lot of people talk about this theory and about why maybe Sam Levinson was pushing all of this weird narratives, and I don't know. I think Sam Levinson's laptop needs to be checked is all I gotta say. And I just think it's weird to be having Sydney Sweeney dressed up as a baby OnlyFans model to then like making the end be about the Bible and Christianity. Like something about it just doesn't sit right with me, but let me know your thoughts. All right, the next thing I want to talk about has to do with Amanda Bynes, Dan Schneider, and Brian Peck. So we all know how Amanda Bynes really has been going through it recently. I feel like there is no secret to that. And she's in a conservatorship like Britney Spears was, and she obviously looks a lot different than what we're used to seeing, and she hasn't worked in a long time as an actor anymore. But essentially, there has always been a long-running conspiracy theory that Dan Schneider is the reason for that, and that Dan like had a creepy relationship with Amanda Bynes. I think that goes without saying regardless. Like he obviously did have a weird relationship with her. They were very close. They were seen, like a lot of people on set claimed that, you know, they saw Amanda like massaging him and like giving him shoulder rubs, etc. Like it was weird behavior. But Dan actually followed her throughout a lot of her career that I think a lot of people don't know about. Like onto What I Like About You. That was a Dan Schneider show. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that. But when it comes to Amanda Bynes, I truly understand where the conspiracy theories are coming from in regards to Dan Schneider, because I think it is so strange how Dan Schneider was with Amanda Bynes from the beginning of her career. He literally was the one who found her. And yet, if you look up Amanda Bynes and Dan Schneider, there are 0 photographs of them together. And I just find that hard to believe. And I want to know why they were scrubbed from the internet, because like, it's not like we're all just going to forget that the Amanda show and What I Like About You was all created by Dan Schneider. So we know that they were in contact with each other, obviously. But I just find that to be very, very suspicious.
What really happened to Amanda Bynes? I would get a snack for this. We're going to be here a while because this story does not start with Dan Schneider like everyone thinks. This story starts with Amanda's dad, Rick Bynes. Amanda Bynes was born on April 3rd, 1986 in Thousand Oaks, California to an upper middle class family as the youngest of 3 children. Her dad, Rick, was a dentist with his own private practice, and her mom, Lynn, worked there as a dental assistant and the office manager. Now, when I realized her mom was originally from Canada and her dad was originally from Chicago, I was like, well, what brought them to California? And I'm glad I did that digging, because there's no evidence as to how they met or why in particular they moved to California, but we do know that Rick was pursuing stand-up comedy on the side. In fact, years later, when Amanda was on the Jay Leno show, she even referenced her dad submitting a joke to Jay Leno and getting paid $50 for it.
93, I was 7. My dad actually submitted a joke to you. You actually told it on the air.
So you pretty much retired on that.
Yeah.
And you've been living
that
off
was my plan.
Been living off the interest of that all these years.
I sent you 200 more the next day. And none ever made the air.
Yeah, it probably didn't reach me in time. Well, thank you very much.
So when Amanda was born and started to show signs from an early age of this big personality, unlike in my usual child star stories, it wasn't her mom encouraging her, it was her dad. In fact, Rick had tried to get all 3 of his children into the entertainment industry as kids. In an early interview, Amanda cites her older sister Jillian as a source of inspiration for her after growing up watching her in community theater shows. But both of Amanda's siblings are super low profile to this day, so I think Amanda was the only one that showed any interest in actually pursuing it. And she was talented at it, so by 7 years old, she's in several commercials and stage shows, but it was her dad enrolling her in a kids' comedy camp at the Laugh Factory that changed everything. During this camp, she was advised by Arsenio Hall and Richard Pryor. Yes, you did have to audition for this camp. This was like a high-profile rich kid comedy, which also makes the story unusual. Like most parents that push their kids into acting at a young age come from a lot of economic strife and kind of use their children as a form of income. That wasn't the case for Rick. Rick was like chasing this dream for the dream. But because this was such a high profile camp, a lot of the other kids in it were also already acting, and one of them was an active member of a popular kids sketch comedy show. And that girl was Katrina Johnson, star of Nickelodeon's All That. So at this kids comedy camp's end of summer showcase, literally hosted by Arsenio Hall, executive producer of All That, Dan Schneider, is in the audience to support Katrina Johnson. And that would be the first night that he would set sight on a 10-year-old Amanda Bynes performing stand-up. He wastes no time and casts her in season 3 of All That immediately. For a little Amanda, this is like a true Hollywood story. She is a fan favorite and total standout right away. I remember watching reruns of All That. It is obvious that she's a total star, but it's also obvious that she is the baby of the cast. She's like the kid's sister to all of them in comparison to the players that have been there for 3 seasons already. Now, I want to be sensitive about what I say because Amanda herself has never spoken out about her experiences on the set of All That or after, but according to the docuseries Quiet on Set, cast members recall a lot of times when they were in class on set, because remember, these are all kids, they have to do schooling in between shooting. There were a lot of times when they would realize that Amanda was missing, only to find out later that she was with Dan during these missing times. At the same time, everyone recalls her being with her father non-stop, like he was a helicopter over Amanda at all times. And it kind of seems like from these accounts, Rick and Dan started becoming almost partners in creating the star that would become Amanda Bynes. Because only 3 years after she gets cast and All That, Dan launches The Amanda Show. And I want to point out before we get into The Amanda Show that before that even launched, Amanda was balancing All That on top of a show that often gets forgotten. It was called Figure It Out, and she acted as a regular panelist. So by 13 years old, she is balancing 2 full-time television shows plus the launch of her own. Now, it's important to note that The Amanda Show was the first where Dan Schneider was credited as the creator, a name he would later be referred to as by Jeanette McCurdy in her book Exposing Her Life as a Child Star. And we would learn from Jeanette and others who have spoken out against him that Dan would often encourage his teen actors to drink, party, give him hugs, massages. A lot of people recount watching Amanda giving him massages on set. It's also been reported that he was very quick to anger and abused his power in a lot of ways. The biggest and most documented way was towards his female writers on All That and The Amanda Show. In 2000, he would face a lawsuit for splitting his female writers' salaries in half, like making them share it. He would offer them extra money to act out very bizarre and often highly sexualized requests, and seemed to regularly roll out blacklist threats to anyone who spoke out against him. Like, everyone was scared of this man. Not to mention, he would write intentionally hypersexualized jokes into kids' programming. And you know what I want to say to that? In the Quiet on Set documentary, there was a lot of talk about how inappropriate that was for us kids to see and hear. But as a kid who grew up watching these shows, I promise you those jokes weren't for us. They weren't to like indoctrinate us. Maybe they were, but I promise you they went right over at least my head. Kids are innocent. We weren't watching knowing what the name Penelope Taint meant. We just thought, oh, that's a funny character. These jokes, the feet, the spaghetti in the jacuzzi, the phallic objects near faces, those were for the adults he knew were watching. There's only one type of adult that would be watching children's programming, and he knew it because he was one of them. And as for Amanda's dad during this time, I find it really interesting because all reports are about how strict he was, how controlling he was over her, but there's no doubt that he was a witness to a lot of this behavior and did nothing. Not only is there an incredibly tight leash around Amanda from her family, but it seems like her dad is extending that leash to Dan, and Amanda is now in this flow of working back to back nonstop with no outside friends her own age or experiences. And it just makes me so sad because she had no childhood, but she made ours. All of those kids did. Raquel, Jamie, Jenna, Drake, and Josh. And so when Amanda starts to get older after winning so many awards, skyrocketing to the top, bringing Dan with her because of her talent, Dan is recognizing that she's growing out of Nickelodeon, but he's not willing to give her up. So when The Amanda Show ends, instead of Amanda pursuing projects on her own with her own agency, she's now signed to CAA, the biggest agency in the world, Dan decides he's going to write another show for her. And that's when he co-creates What I Like About You, another series where he can stay close to and in charge of Amanda for the rest of her teenage years. And also, I think this was actually Dan's dream, was to write for adult television and become a trusted showrunner. And he saw Amanda Bynes as his ticket to that kind of success. Before he fucks it up, What I Like About You is pretty successful. I used to love that show, and I had no idea he was a co-creator. That show ran for 4 seasons and continued Amanda's streak of no breaks in between work, because while she was shooting What I Like About You, she also shot What a Girl Wants and She's the Man in between seasons. And as soon as What I Like About You ends, she's in production for Hairspray. I can't stress this enough. By the time this girl is 20 years old, she has worked for 10 years straight with no breaks in between, and Dan Schneider wrapped around her the entire time. And I remember as a kid just being absolutely in awe of her, because even in interviews, she would just talk about how she had it all together, how she did it because she had a supportive family and she wasn't interested in drugs or alcohol. It was just this perfect role model. But following the huge success of Hairspray in 2007 is about the same time that we start to see cracks in that perfect image. When What I Like About You ended, Amanda simultaneously ended her relationship with Dan Schneider, never to work with him again. She fires her dad as her manager, and she walks from her agents at CAA in order to sign a new contract with the William Morris agency. And this is huge. This is Amanda Bynes' first stab at independence, and I find it really interesting that both Dan and her father had to go at the same time. And while this time breeds so much hope, unfortunately, I think this is where things start to go wrong. I still think she did the absolute right thing. What happens next is something absolutely everyone should have saw coming, especially if the abuse that we all speculate and assume happened. There were plenty of witnesses, plenty of people that knew and did nothing. But for that, I am going to a part 2. What do you guys think so far?
So what I find interesting is that there was actually a Twitter account that was named at PersianLA27, which was allegedly Amanda Bynes, who claimed that she was abused by Dan Schneider, literally writing, "Can you imagine having an abortion at 13 years old because your boss impregnated you, committed because your father touched you?" So I think it's interesting to hear that there is this narrative around Amanda's father and how her relationship with her dad is very complicated. Like, she literally was like tried to get emancipated. So I think that that maybe corroborates that this Twitter account maybe actually was hers, and maybe she is telling the truth here. But something I want to talk about has to do with Brian Peck. So Brian Peck was like a huge part of the Quiet on Set documentary, but there is a conspiracy theory that Brian Peck, who is a known predator on Nickelodeon, is actually Josh Peck's father. I think this was a common misconception that turned into a conspiracy theory. And it's a little bit interesting, but I don't think ultimately that it's true. But we don't know who Josh Peck's father is. We never have. We've never seen him, and he claims that he is dead. But we don't know his name, nothing. But Brian Peck specifically is interesting here because in 2003, he was arrested and charged with child SA, and we found out later that that was actually against Drake Bell, who obviously played Josh Peck's counterpart in Drake and Josh. So Drake himself claimed that Dan Schneider, like despite all of the claims about Dan being a horrible boss and like a predator and gross in his own right, apparently he was very supportive about Drake, and Brian Peck immediately fired him. Like, he had a tenure at Nickelodeon, which obviously got revoked, and he never worked with Dan Schneider again. He did go on to work on The Suite Life of Zack and Cody. So Disney, can you please explain why you hired a convicted predator to work on a TV show for children with children in it? That I would like to know, because that's just crazy. But I don't know if I necessarily believe this Josh Peck conspiracy theory of it, but what I do think is interesting is the fact that pre-conviction, Drake Bell, who was being abused by Brian Peck, he was about to start the show Drake and Josh with, of course, Josh Peck. And the whole reason why Brian Peck got caught for doing what he did, because allegedly Brian Peck was pressuring Drake Bell to convince Dan Schneider to cast Brian Peck as the father in Drake and Josh, who is Josh's dad. They're like stepbrothers, and the mom's side is Drake's family and the dad's side is Josh's family. So Brian Peck literally wanted to portray Josh Peck's father. So what's up with that? But either way, obviously when that happened, it made Drake come forward, because the thought of working with him closely on a show like that was obviously terrifying, knowing the things that he did to him. So he ended up telling his mom, and that is how Brian Peck got arrested in the first place. So I don't know if I necessarily believe the conspiracy theory here, but I do find it to be very, very interesting, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I also really want to hear your thoughts on Amanda Bynes' Persian LA Twitter account, because I think that that needs to be looked into more. It is a dark rabbit hole, and she claims some very crazy things that have ended up being true later on, like about John Travolta being a little sus. Like, apparently John Travolta had like a bunch of men in his dressing rooms during Hairspray, and now I have seen several different conspiracy theories about John Travolta dating men, which obviously is not a problem. But then I actually think that Amanda Bynes was claiming that they were like underage men, so obviously that is gross. So I don't know, and by Amanda Bynes I mean the Twitter account, not actual Amanda Bynes. Maybe. I kind of think it is actually her though, but let me know your guys' thoughts. Anyway, that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of all of these conspiracy theories. But that is it. Make sure you follow me on TikTok and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every week. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.